Okay, so today we're diving into something pretty massive, huh? The energy transition.
Yeah.
But we want to look past the hype, all the talk about a clean energy utopia and get down to the nitty-gritty.
Yeah, I mean, this isn't just about solar panels and wind turbines. This is about a whole reshaping of how the world works, economically, geopolitically, even in our daily lives.
Exactly.
Hmm.
I mean, think about it. Energy touches everything. How we get around, how we power our homes, what we can produce, even how nations interact with each other. It's all tied to energy.
And right now, we're in the midst of a pretty fundamental shift in that whole system. It's complex, it's messy, and honestly, there's no guarantee how it's all going to shake out.
So that's what we're here to unpack. What are the real forces driving this transition? What are the potential roadblocks? And what does it all mean for the future? Because this isn't just an environmental issue, it's an economic issue, it's a security issue, it's a human issue, really.
All right, so let's start with the economics because that's really at the heart of a lot of this. The scale of investment needed for this transition is astronomical. We're talking about trillions of dollars every year for decades just to get close to some of the goals being thrown around.
Trillions, huh?
Yeah,
That's a lot of zeros.
yeah, it is. And it's not just about the total amount, it's about where that money goes. We're seeing huge investment in developed countries, which is great, but there are concerns about whether that same level of financing is reaching developing nations.
Which is a problem because, as I understand it, those are the places that are going to see the biggest increase in energy demand in the coming years.
Exactly. And they're often the ones who are most vulnerable to the impacts of climate change. So how do we make sure they're not left behind in this transition? How do we ensure a just and equitable transition for everyone?
Yeah, that's a huge question. And then there's the whole issue of who controls those financial flows. Because let's be honest, money equals power.
For sure. And we're already seeing some pretty interesting shifts in that power dynamic.
Like what?
Well, think about the traditional energy giants. The countries whose economies have been built on oil and gas for decades.
Right.
They're not just sitting on the sidelines, they're actually making some pretty big investments in things like renewable energy and even green hydrogen.
Hmm. Interesting. So they're trying to pivot and stay ahead of the curve.
Exactly. They realize the world's changing and they want to maintain their influence. It's a smart strategy, really.
It definitely highlights how this transition isn't just about technology, it's about geopolitics too.
Yeah.
About who has the resources, who controls the supply chains, who sets the agenda.
Oh, absolutely. And that's where things can get really complicated because sometimes those geopolitical realities can clash with the ideals of a smooth, clean energy transition.
Yeah, and I think we've seen some of that play out recently, haven't we? Like with the war in Ukraine and the impact that's had on energy security.
Right. That was a stark reminder that energy independence matters a lot to countries. And sometimes those short-term needs for reliable energy can conflate with long-term climate goals.
Like when some European countries had to, at least temporarily, fall back on coal power, even though they've been pushing for a coal phase out for years.
Yeah, that's a good example. It shows the tension between what we want to do ideally and what we sometimes have to do in the real world.
Right. And it highlights another big challenge, which is the fact that we can't just scrap all our existing energy infrastructure overnight.
No, we're stuck with a lot of it, at least for now. And that creates a lot of inertia in the system, resistance to change.
Yeah, for sure. But there are some interesting things happening within those existing energy companies.
Yeah.
Like, remember that whole engine number one situation with ExxonMobil?
Oh, yeah, that was a big deal.
For those who don't know, a tiny activist investor group managed to get enough shareholder support to force some changes on ExxonMobil's board to make them take climate change more seriously.
And it worked. I mean, ExxonMobil is now investing heavily in lower carbon technologies. And that shows that change is possible even within these giant companies.
Yeah, it's a good reminder that divesting from these industries isn't always the answer. Sometimes it's more effective to work from within and push for change from the inside.
Right, because ultimately we need these companies to be part of the solution. They have the resources, the expertise, the scale to really make a difference.
So it's about accountability and incentives.
Yeah,
How do we make sure they're actually following through on their commitments, not just greenwashing?
exactly. And a big part of that, of course, is technology. We need breakthroughs and we need them fast.
Yeah, we're seeing some cool stuff happening with battery storage, with green hydrogen production.
Which, just to clarify, means hydrogen produced using renewable energy.
Right, and carbon capture technologies. But the question is, can we scale those technologies up quickly enough to make a real dent in emissions?
That's the billion, or rather trillion-dollar question. Take hydrogen, for example. It's getting a lot of hype, but the infrastructure to actually use it widely is still pretty much non-existent.
Yeah, and there are those challenges around transporting it. I know there are companies working on ways to bind hydrogen for easier transport, but it's still early days.
We might see it used in some niche applications first, like in heavy industry or maybe even in aviation. But for things like cars and trucks, widespread adoption is probably still a ways off.
And then there's the issue of critical minerals. Things like lithium, cobalt, rare earth elements, all those things we need to build batteries, solar panels, all that clean tech,
And right now, the supply chain for many of those minerals is heavily concentrated in China.
which creates some, shall we say, geopolitical anxieties, right?
Mhm.
Because it means a lot of countries could become dependent on China for their energy transition.
Yeah, it's almost like the oil dependency of the past, but with the different set of players. And countries are starting to wake up to that risk.
Oh yeah, there's a whole scramble going on right now to secure access to those critical minerals.
Right.
It's becoming a major economic and national security issue.
Absolutely. And even if you can get your hands on those minerals, there's another hurdle: getting them out of the ground and processed. The permitting process for new mining projects can take a decade or more.
So even if demand is skyrocketing, it can take years for supply to catch up.
Exactly. And that creates a real bottleneck in the whole transition. It highlights the very real, on-the-ground challenges of building this new clean energy system. It's not just about having the cool tech. You need the raw materials, the infrastructure, the whole shebang.
I mean, let's not forget about the demand side of things, too. It's not just about producing clean energy. It's about using energy more efficiently in the first place.
Right. Every unit of energy we save is one less that needs to be generated, whether that's through better building design, smarter appliances, or even just changing our behavior to consume less energy overall.
Yeah, there are definitely some low-hanging fruit there that we can all grab onto.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive, I think the main takeaway is that the energy transition is a multifaceted beast.
It's got so many moving parts. The
Yeah.
finance, the geopolitics, the technology, the social aspects.
Right. It's all interconnected, and there are no easy answers.
But understanding the economic realities, where the money's coming from, where it's going, who's benefiting, that's crucial for navigating this transition successfully.
Absolutely. It's not just about saving the planet, it's about building a more sustainable, equitable, and secure future for everyone.
And with that in mind, here's something to ponder as you go about your day. How will this massive global energy shift affect the world order in the years to come? Think about the countries that depend on fossil fuel exports, the ones that are becoming leaders in clean energy. What happens to the balance of power? It's a pretty fascinating and potentially volatile situation.